I am a corporate recruiter, and this is me reacting to why job hunting sucks today. Which, spoiler alert, it does. It really does suck. I'm not going to disagree with that. It absolutely sucks to job search in today's market. So,
Brought to you by Bethel School of Technology. Learn more at betheltech.net/Ken Coleman. More than 70% of job seekers believe the current labor market is not conducive to landing a new employment opportunity. This is because the current job search is taking longer and longer. More data on this.
that is
This
correct.
was
It
from the
is.
Josh Bersin Company and Workforce Solutions business. AMS had a study as well that said the recruitment process now averages about 43 days. And the report says it's unsustainable if companies are to remain competitive and keep pace with the fast changing needs of their industry. So there's two issues there we'll dive into in the data. First issue, are 70% of job seekers right, or are they just feeling that it's really hard?
I think they're correct. It is way harder to search for a job, which I assume this other person on the show is going to state why. And the to really simplify it, which is probably an oversimplification, is when there is an overabundance of people seeking a job versus the lack of jobs available. Basically, the supply of jobs is low compared to the demand of good jobs is high. You get a bad process. That means companies get more restrictive, pay gets lower, the interview process gets dragged out more and more. And when the reverse happens, when there's more jobs than the supply of candidates, uh, interview times shrink, pay gets up, so that's a loose approximation of what a good and bad market is. And right now we are in a bad market. So I assume this person is going to agree with that. And I would say, yeah, it sucks to be a job seeker right now. Absolutely. No disagreement for me on that.
Your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I see that sentiment all the time in I post a lot on LinkedIn, and I see the comments that come in, and people are feeling. You hear this data that's produced mainstream, and it says job market's great, layoffs are at an all-time low, the employment rate is great, and I think just the reality is people are looking around just going like, this just doesn't feel this way. And I think the underwriting sentiment that I'm hearing is it's never been this hard to find a job.
Yeah.
Like
Accurate.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I had to look for a job, it wasn't even this bad. And I think that the numbers are misleading. I think that if you look at what happened in 2020, this has been the most topsy-turvy job market in the last 5 years that I've ever seen in my entire career.
Without question. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it
I
was
liken it to an
crazy.
employment pendulum. It's like swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
Most of the time, unfortunately for us, the employee is buried in the employer's side. They have they hold all the cards. They have all the power. The employment pendulum swung real heavy this way towards the employer during the 2020 pandemic. Everybody reacted.
Yep.
Layoffs went through the roof. It's one of the worst times to ever look for. I actually lost my job in 2020, which was the catalyst for me starting, talking about this stuff in more, more public way.
Sure.
But then we found that the employment pendulum swung back really hard in 2020. So what happens?
Yep.
All these companies
Okay.
knee-jerk reaction. I think companies look for any opportunities. What's that saying? The never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's right.
So they had all this, maybe trimming the fat is, I hate the term, but that's kind of what they use. They trimmed the fat in 2020. The job market, the employment market kind of plummeted. Everybody was laid off, and then they realized once the supply chain kind of turned back on, they realized
They need more people. I mean, this is pretty common. And this is honestly, like he said, the pendulum is, I think, a very good metaphor. Is before 2020, it was employer, it was harder to get a job. They did a lot of layoffs. And then what happens is they lay off too many people. They now realize, oh crap, we need to hire a bunch more people because, well, we need help to market our product, to make our product, to sell our product, to design our product, etc. And they got rid of too many people. So then they're like, let's hire a bunch of people. But the problem is, all those people they let go, some of them retire, some of them go to different industries. So there's now a talent shortage where before there was a talent glut. And I imagine that is going to happen again this time as well. Is there's going to be a case where this is a really bad time to be a job seeker, and then it's going to swing right back around because a ton of people just left the workforce and the companies are going to need those people. The question is when, and I wish I had the science to back that up. My gut's telling me it's going to get slightly better next year and then maybe bigger swing towards the end of the year, but that's a tough thing. People need a lot of math stuff to exactly know when that thing is going to happen.
Oh crap,
we need people.
Yeah, we need people. And we saw this major hiring boom, but in reality, it wasn't that there was these new jobs being created. It was just replacing the jobs that had been laid off. And so we see these numbers like, oh, the hiring market's great, and everybody was getting these offers. Well, all of these companies had reshuffled their resources and started hiring, like software developers, for example, were a huge boom. You couldn't trip out your front door without landing 2 or 3 better offers.
That's exactly right.
And so it was like a heyday. And I think that the employees at that time felt like, hey, we finally have the power. So it's like this whole like thing about like the quiet quitting, the great resignation, all these like terms that we saw kind of coming out during this period of time started happening. And just as fast as it turned on, where it was like the heyday of employment for the employees, the pendulum swung this way. Suddenly it swings back this way really hard. And the reality is that I don't think there was ever, the job numbers are misleading in that I don't think that there was ever a lot of jobs created to begin with. I think it was just a replacement of the jobs that were, eliminated.
I think this might be incorrect. There were a large amount of jobs, but COVID, I will say the job market swung back. It was like around COVID, it sucked. Everybody was getting laid off. And then until about late 2022, it was really good. That was when the pendulum swung back to employees. But let's say, the end of 2022, now we're back to it sucks. And there's way less jobs available. There's a lot of other people that anticipate why that happens that are probably smarter than me. My gut as to why it's happened is simply they did overhire during COVID, but they also expected the COVID numbers to go forever. And typically you will notice like hirings and firings are around like quarterly reports for businesses. So that's what I believe is Q3 in 2022 was a real bad for companies, or alternatively, Q2 was real bad, and it just took a while for that to actually hit. So that's my view.
Eliminated in 2020, and a lot of those jobs that were eliminated or being replaced and are now being reported in our numbers, this is my opinion at least, is they took a full-time headcount and then they turned it into 2 part-time headcounts or a contracted headcount, and so the numbers.
Or alternatively, outsource that headcount, which I feel like more people should be talking about. There is a lot of outsourcing going on, and that can be real bad for, well, if your job gets outsourced, the company is still having that job, but it's not going to be you, and I think that sucks. So outsourcing is something that I think should really be talked about more. And
still say, hey, we're adding jobs to the economy, but the reality is it's kind of like the shuffling of the shell game.
That's right. Well, let's just be honest. The adjustment by the Bureau of Labor Statistics that was widely reported earlier this month.
Developers get
cool ads.
Adjusted by almost 1 million jobs, or right at that number, 800,000 to 1 million jobs.
Yeah.
If
it was like around 800.
800,000. So again,
that was a second revision too.
Second revision. That's exactly right. So to your point, jobs are scarce.
100%.
I don't think that you can say that they're abundant
I agree
right
with
now,
that.
even with the unemployment rate still in a very historically good.
I want to make a correction to this. Is essentially the jobs that a lot of people went to college for are scarce. If you are blue collar or a couple of niche industries such as healthcare, specifically nursing or accounting, it is still a good market. But if you were, most of the other white collar jobs, real tough to get. There is a lack of them while there's a lot more blue collar jobs. So,
I mean, low 4s is historically good. Not an all-time low. All right, I'll talk about that second piece. Do you agree with this assessment from this data that the current 43 days is unsustainable? That seems a bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah, I don't think, we have, in the recruiting world, we are measured, and this is any company that's worth their weight. In fact, Ramsey Solutions probably has a time to fill metric as well.
That's right.
Yep.
Recruiters in talent acquisition departments are measured on the time to fill, which is the time a job is
internal and external. Less so for external recruiters, but there is definitely time to fill is a huge metric. Just shrinking a time to fill by 5 days is massive. So a 42-day time to fill would send a lot of recruiting managers into a tizzy of how crazy that is. But it's also not always something they control. A lot of times, time to fill is also by the manager themselves, but recruiting can definitely edge that number lower.
Open until the time that an offer is accepted, and that's a commonly accepted measurement. I would say industry across all industries probably around 45 days time to fill, with some harder to fill, like probably 60 days time to fill for some tech roles that were particularly difficult.
This part it does, at least at my company. I think we were in the 30s. Anything after 30 days was aged, which was sort of the warning light. But that metric of base to time to fill is going to depend on the industry. Mine, at least, I think it was in 30 days, but some particular recs were longer. But yeah, 42 is pretty long, honestly.
So 45 days time to fill is not or 43 is not an unsustainable. It's a very
I was
common.
curious. I'm not sure why.
I don't think it's unsustainable, and I think a big thing here is based on the market itself, right? Like, if you have a crazy market where candidates are in hot demand and there's not a lot of jobs, there's a ton of jobs and not a lot of people to fill them, then it's unsustainable because you're going to lose talent to your competitors, which has happened. But in a bad job market, that's very sustainable because they're not going anywhere. Which, again, I'm not agreeing that that's a good thing. I'm just saying, like, how that occurs. So,
Why they feel that that's unsustainable, given the fact that I think you just revealed what I agree with, which is jobs are scarce. So there's plenty of candidates. And I
yep.
think, if nothing else, companies have a little bit more time on their hands because there are a lot of people applying, a lot of people
They
available, which is
absolutely
why
are.
we're seeing.
In a hot market, 42 days would be unsustainable in like Q1 2022. But it's not unsustainable in today's market. It's just when a good job market comes, then it's unsustainable.
People are 70% of workers are going, it's really hard to find a job now.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of there's a big disconnect between the number of you almost too many chefs in the kitchen when you're trying to make these decisions. And I think from a candidate's perspective, they're just trying to find a job, but companies want to go round after round of interview, right. And that extends the job, the offer process, and that can be very frustrating. But so to the candidate, it can seem like.
Yeah, and the reason they extend that is because a little known fact is hiring managers would rather make no hire than a bad hire. I feel like that doesn't get talked about enough, but they would absolutely rather make no hire than a bad hire. And all of those extra rounds are to double check and confirm and ensure that the candidate is correct, which I don't agree with. I don't think you need that many rounds. I've worked with managers and I've changed the recruiting process a little bit at some companies that you don't need that many rounds to make that decision. But that is a thing that is not talked about in the recruiting spaces, especially from the candidate side, is the reason it is so long is they fear making a bad decision. And the more checks they have, the reason it is a bad to get a job and the reason it's so tough is because all these managers are now having the ability to elongate the interview process to make sure. Because in a better market, they wouldn't have that time because the candidates would get snatched up by a competitor. So,
like that's the deal. But in reality, I think 45 days time to fill is consistent. But there's, to your point, there's just not a lot of jobs out there.
I have a hunch, just based on what I'm hearing from callers, that AI and its ascent into the screening process, which makes a lot of sense for companies. I mean, if I put myself in their position, you can get through a lot of screening and all this kind of stuff, and we can make it more efficient. But it feels like it's making it really frustrating for people that are seeking employment because it's so much easier to apply on one hand, but on the other hand, it's also a lot easier, and I use the word easier loosely, to get dumped because of AI software. If you've got a keyword in there that flags you,
That's
I
not how
saw a report
ATSs
that
work.
they felt like over 2 million qualified workers were dismissed by AI during 2021 because of that software. So is that also a factor in why 70% of American workers are saying, man, it's really hard to get hired? What's your take on that as an HR guy?
Yeah, that's the Pandora's box for sure. I think it's probably one of the most common memes I see in the job search world is, oh, AI chews up my resume and spits it out. The reality is that there's a big misconception about how AI is used in job search.
Okay.
In the job,
Yep.
From a recruiter's
All right,
perspective,
let's
how they
clear
use it.
that up.
Yeah, so
Because I'm buying a little bit of that.
the reality is that there's always been automation in the applicant tracking
Absolutely.
systems, and so the AI systems are not necessarily set up to reject. In other words, it's not self-aware. It's not making decisions on your behalf as the recruiter. And as a
okay.
recruiter, we don't want systems to make decisions on. But I want to see all the candidates so that I can make sure that I find the right person.
Okay, so there's a myth that we're busting right out of the gate.
100%. Yeah, it's a myth. Now,
Thank you. So glad somebody else. It's so hard. Everybody keeps perpetuating the ATS myth. Thank you for helping bust it on live radio or whatever this is.
there is such a thing as keywords, and
Right.
sometimes if if you're I'll use myself as an example. There was a job that I had posted one time. Within 26 hours, we posted it on a Tuesday at like 4 p.m. It was for a senior IT, like a VP level IT leader at a technical startup. And we got 750 applications in the first 26 hours. So by the time we came by close of business the following day, they shut the rec down. There were so many candidates, and 99% of them, 98% of them were people that had never even worked in technology, didn't have any degrees, didn't have any.
That is usually the case. People should not fear like that there's all these people apply. It's really like 1 in 20 is even remotely qualified. Having looked at and done recruiting for a while, a lot of the time.
Qualifications, they were completely unrelated to the job posting. So it's like, how do you get that number down to a manageable number that you can actually see the people who do have those skills and but not have them eliminate people who legitimately have the skills and maybe don't have the best resume. So that's the keyword.
I want to jump in because you just said something I think we've got to discuss.
Absolutely.
Okay. Why in the world are people applying for things that if they had any sense at all, they would realize what you just said?
Because they can. And that's the simple thing. That is a large part of a recruiter's job, is to just keep going. I know what he's going to say is that there's not a real reason. People see an opportunity and they're not going to let them stop them. Like, why would they? I get it from the candidate's perspective. This is a chance that could change your life. Why would I not apply? There's a small chance that, hey, maybe I actually have something here, like that I don't see. Like, I get why people do that. And I feel like when you get to be a recruiter, they apply even though they're not remotely qualified because this could change their life. It's the same reason people apply to the lottery. The chances of you actually winning the lottery are exceptionally low, but somebody's going to win it. And that person thinks, why can't it be me? And I don't blame them for it.
Like, this huge chunk of them aren't even qualified. Why are they applying?
Yeah, and I want to get back to the AI point too.
No, we're not going to leave it.
Yeah,
but this is a quick...
He's like, look, no, this is a huge myth in AI, and I need to bust it. Please don't move from it. I get what that guy's saying.
There's a real quick take.
100%,
give me 20 seconds on that.
It's the proverbial take your shot. Like in hockey, you take your shot.
Okay.
The reality with AI, with applicants being able to apply very quickly to jobs like I'm thinking like the LinkedIn Easy Apply. I mean, all I gotta do is just hit a button.
There's no skin in the game.
And now there's AI systems, like on the job seeker side, there's AI systems that will apply for you, like hundreds of applications at a time. So it's like you can just take your shot. And with the remote jobs nowadays, people can be sitting in India or in Europe and be applying to American jobs, and there's no barrier to entry.
All right, launch your.
I really like how he was crying too. Like, no, hold on. Let me go back to this common myth and let me bust. I feel for that guy. But yeah, that's largely I like what the other guy said. Did they not like drop his name or something in there? Can I find it in the? Who was that? I think it was. Wow, they didn't even give him the. Did they like not drop the recruiter's name? I think he's like the famous guy that does the life after layoffs, but I'm not 100% sure. So regardless, I like your style. You answer the right questions. So from one corporate recruiter to another, I like all of your answers. So that's it for me on this one. If you have any other videos you want me to react to, let me know below, and I'd be glad to react to them. But so far, good job. I assume person who did the life after layoff. I really think they should have credited them better, but